Hi, my Wonderlings. Before we start this episode, I have a disclaimer for you. If you're a regular around here, you know that Welcome to Wonderland is a family-friendly podcast and typically appropriate for all ages. Given the topic of this particular episode, however, listener discretion is advised. Welcome to this very special first After Dark edition of Welcome to Wonderland. My name is Amii, and I'll be your hostess as we explore a topic that you may be curious about. Today, we're wondering about a slightly more adult topic.
I wonder.
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 Join me as we learn more about a somewhat controversial topic, marijuana.
Pot.
The devil's lettuce.
Grass.
Mary Jane,
Sticky icky.
Kush,
Weed.
Mary Jane.
Doobie.
dope. Some people call it dope.
Wacky tobacco.
Dank.
Sativa.
And then you got your different cons. Like I've heard like brunch before, exotic, Zaza.
Oh, we used to call them shmem.
Oh yeah, weed.
And grass.
Cannabis.
Gas.
Devil's lettuce,
All right.
Cannabis sativa.
Yeah.
the herb, ganja.
That's all I can come over right now.
No matter what you call it, you've probably at least heard of marijuana. You may even already know a thing or two. But let's journey down this rabbit hole together and learn all about the psychoactive drug derived from the cannabis plant. First, let's talk about what you do know.
Well, it is currently illegal in some places, and some places have legalized it. It gets you high.
What is it?
What is it? It's a plant. It's the leaf of a plant. It's actually the bud that forms on the plant.
It is a weed that flowers, and that some of the chemicals that come out of the flower can be used for, or can either be smoked or done into oil or whatever. That it's, I guess, I don't know. People smoke it and people cook with it.
Plant has maybe thought to be medicinal properties.
Yes.
When you can ingest it
And in
different ways. Yeah.
I know that marijuana is a naturally occurring plant that grows from the earth and was put here by God or Mother Nature for us to use for our benefit.
I know it's a plant. It can be used to as a drug to smoke and alter your mindset. And I know it's got a lot of other uses like hemp for cords and rope and stuff like that. And yeah, that's about all I know of marijuana.
Cannabis sativa, cannabis indica, and cannabis ruderalis are all annual plants, the parts of which are harvested for their recreational and medicinal uses. Sativa and indica are native to Eastern and Southern Asia, respectively, and ruderalis is native to Central and Eastern Europe and Russia. Tetrahydrocannabinol, more commonly referred to as just THC, is the main psychoactive component of cannabis, but there are at least 483 known compounds in the plant, including at least 65 other cannabinoids, such as cannabidiol, or more commonly, CBD. Given that cannabis is a naturally occurring plant, it may come as no surprise that it's been harvested for a really long time. When do you think people first started cultivating cannabis for medicinal or recreational use?
Probably after whoever discovered it initially was like, ooh.
Probably before written history, right? I mean, that I would be willing to bet something as sturdy as marijuana has been on this earth since possibly dinosaurs roamed, or at least since the planet reset itself after the mass extinction event.
Oh, I would assume it goes back a long time. I'd say maybe 1500s. I don't know.
I want to say it was in South or Central Asia, and it was thousands of years. Like I think that's where it originated from, and that was, I want to say, like 3,000 years ago.
If I had to guess, I feel like in the U.S. it may have been like the early early 90s, but I feel like in other countries it might have been even before that, maybe like even late 1800s, if I had to guess. But I actually have no clue about when it was started to be used, though.
I guess it was probably something that wound up being traded when they were doing the spice trades and things like that. I would believe that it was probably being traded in the 1600s.
Well, I know that Native Americans smoked peyote, and they knew the medicinal properties of it. So I know at least as far back as they go, which could be a very long time ago. I couldn't tell you a year.
Well, I mean, the Native Americans were they were smoking marijuana like for years. Like that was something that they were doing even before the Europeans came to North America.
What was the question again?
When did it start getting cultivated for?
Oh, when? Geez, I don't know. 1800s?
It's way before then.
Oh, man.
Well, I was just going to throw out, so I figure Columbus discovered America, right? 1492, and the natives were here. So he technically discovered. But yeah, they were here, and I believe they were already practicing that at that time. So I would think it would have to be before that, but I'll go with that.
Before even Jesus.
Right.
Not even kidding.
Yep.
BC.
BC.
Most sources I found cite the first documented usage of marijuana to 2727 BC, where it was included in the father of Chinese medicines, Shen Yang's Pharmacopoeia, for its healing properties in treating rheumatism, menstrual problems, gout, malaria, and maybe surprisingly, absent-mindedness. A little later in history, around 2000 to 1400 BC, the Vedas, sacred Hindu texts, were compiled that referenced cannabis not only for its medicinal uses, but also for the psychoactive properties. According to ancient texts, the plant was a liberator and a source of happiness, gifted to humans to help us obtain delight and overcome fear. In Africa, around 2000 BC, the Ebers Papyrus in Egypt details the use of cannabis for glaucoma and inflammation, and even grinding it with honey for hemorrhoids. Pollen from cannabis was found on the mummy of Ramesses II, who died in 1213 BC. By around 500 BC, it is believed that cannabis made its way to northern Europe by way of Iranian-Eurasian nomads called Scythians. Herodotus, renowned Greek historian, recorded in his 430 BC, The Histories, reports on ritual and recreational use of cannabis by the Scythians. These records were further validated in 1940 in modern-day Kazakhstan when the remains of a Scythian couple was discovered, along with a leather pouch containing cannabis seeds. There are continued recordings of the use of cannabis both medicinally and recreationally throughout history. By around the 3rd century AD, the Romans even imposed a tax on Egyptian cannabis. All along the way, the fiber of the cannabis plants, commonly referred to as hemp, became more and more common. During the time sometimes referred to as the Golden Age of Sail, which was from about 1000 to 1400 AD, frames, sails, ropes, and cordage made from hemp began to appear on Italian shipping vessels. Hemp sails replaced those made of flax, as the latter didn't stand up to the salt water of the sea and required replacing nearly quarterly. The use of hemp in sails became so important that in 1533, King Henry VIII decreed that all landholders set aside a quarter acre for flax or cannabis for every 60 acres of land they tilled. By the time Queen Elizabeth I was in command, fines in the amount of £5 were imposed on landowners who failed to comply with the hemp growing decree. Unsurprisingly, the use of cannabis, medicinally, recreationally, or as a commodity for fiber, made its way to the Americas. It is reported that George Washington's diaries indicate that he grew hemp at Mount Vernon from 1745 to 1775. Washington had a particular interest in the use of the plant for medicinal purposes, and several entries in his diary indicate that he was growing cannabis high in THC, most commonly referred to now as marijuana. Stories have it that the very first American flag Betsy Ross made was sewn from hemp from Washington's farm. By the 1800s, cannabis was widely used to treat a variety of ailments, including menstrual cramps, although usually as an extract in alcohol and not by smoking. Queen Victoria's personal physician wrote widely on the use of cannabis as medicine. In 1851, marijuana was added to the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, which would have been used for numerous afflictions such as tetanus, cholera, rabies, dysentery, opiate addiction, insanity, gout, and all manner of lady problems. Recreational use of marijuana spiked for the first time in the early 1900s, after the Mexican Revolution, when Mexicans immigrated to the U.S., with the newcomers introducing marijuana for its recreational value. Unfortunately, fear and prejudice for the Spanish-speaking immigrants marred the use of marijuana, and anti-drug campaigns warned against the marijuana menace.
These high school boys and girls are having a hop at the local soda fountain. Innocently they dance, innocent of a new and deadly menace lurking behind closed doors. Marijuana, the burning weed with its roots in hell.
This fear and negative association of cannabis usage is kind of the beginning of the plant, which was once a mandated crop by kings and queens in England, being turned into a scary drug that should be eliminated. By the 1930s, Henry Anslinger, the commissioner for the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, began a campaign for national prohibition of the drug. He contended that marijuana caused insanity and that it pushed people to commit heinous crimes.
Hashish, known to us as marijuana. The weed now, as well as then, is rightly accused of exciting the basest and most criminal tendencies in the minds of its addicts.
This is also the time that Reefer Madness, a series of films which cautioned against the use of marijuana, began appearing. The first Reefer Madness film was financed by a small church group and was entitled Tell Your Children. Its intent was to scare parents, but when Dwayne Esper, notorious for exploitation films, purchased the film, he cut in salacious insert shots and renamed it Reefer Madness.
Of this court, that you don't carry beef.
Judge Herbert!
This interruption.
Judge Herbert, I have here the first copy off the press of the newspaper for which I work as a reporter. It concerns everyone in this room. Marijuana, scourge of our country, is reaching out like a mad killer, mowing down the youth of our land, distorting their minds and leading them into lives of degradation and crime. This evil has struck here, Your Honor, right in your own homes, and has turned innocent play into tragic orgies. Why, at this very moment, your courtroom is filled with smokers of this terrible weed.
In October 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was passed. Among the provisions in the act was one which required importers to register and pay a tax annually of $24. Violation of the act resulted in a fine of not more than $2,000 and/or imprisonment for up to 5 years. The act went into effect on October 1, 1937, and on October 2nd, the FBI and Denver police raided the Lexington Hotel and arrested 58-year-old Samuel R. Caldwell on charges of not paying his marijuana tax. Caldwell would be the first person in the United States convicted for selling marijuana. He was fined $1,000 and sentenced to 4 years of hard labor. Caldwell served out every day of his sentence and was released from prison in 1940 to die 1 year later. Thoughts and feelings around cannabis and its uses have ebbed and flowed throughout the 1900s and so far into the 21st century. Is it legal where you live?
Absolutely not.
THC, no. CBD, I'm not sure. I think so. There's stores that sell it, but whether or not that means legal, I don't know.
No. Marijuana is not, but hemp is. Delta 8 and Delta 9, you can go to the store and buy it.
That's true.
No, marijuana is neither recreationally legal or medicinally legal.
Absolutely not.
So, this question was a little biased because I live in South Carolina, and all the folks I spoke to also live in South Carolina, and it's definitely not legal here. According to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection site, however, while marijuana usage is still federally prohibited, by January of 2012, 16 states and the District of Columbia had legalized marijuana for medicinal purposes. According to Pew Research, as of April 2024, recreational use of marijuana is legal in 24 states for adults 21 and older. There are 6 states where marijuana is fully illegal: Idaho, Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, North Carolina, and yes, South Carolina. Of those 6 states, however, North Carolina and Nebraska have decriminalized the drug. Other states have mixed rules, such as Georgia, which allows only for medicinal use of CBD oil, and other uses have not been decriminalized, meaning people can still be prosecuted for having non-medical marijuana. We had the opportunity to speak with Matt Villardebeau, who is a candidate for the South Carolina State House of Representatives, for his perspective on marijuana in politics.
I am Matt Villardebeau. I am a candidate for State House of Representatives in District 26, which is all of Fort Mill proper, the 29715 zip code.
Remember that South Carolina is one of the few states in which marijuana is fully illegal. Matt, how important is it to voters in your area to legalize marijuana?
I have yet to meet a voter in my area who is against the recreational legalization of marijuana, let alone this years-long get-nothing-done battle we're facing on medical marijuana in this state.
So it sounds like it's important for candidates running for office to have a stance on legalization?
For me, I feel it's critical because I preach heavily about wanting to restore freedom and liberty to the voters of South Carolina, and we cannot deny people access to needed medicine and remedy for pain like marijuana.
We discussed earlier in this episode that the first person convicted of a marijuana-related charge was Samuel Caldwell in 1937. Exact numbers are hard to determine, but according to ACLU reports from 2018, law enforcement made over 500,000 marijuana arrests. There are potentially a lot of people who are currently serving time for marijuana-related crimes. What should happen to incarcerated people who are serving time for marijuana crimes, specifically if it were to become legal?
Nonviolent offenders should be released and offered, some sort of, financial restitution, if you ask me. I think that's tantamount to people being locked up on bad DNA evidence. The fact that people were ever incarcerated for possessing a plant is unconscionable to me. Those folks should be set free, have their full civil rights reinstated, and their records expunged and sealed of any sort of crimes committed on that.
Thank you, Matt, for taking the time to provide us some insight on how important this topic is in today's political climate. As I mentioned, some states have fully legalized and decriminalized marijuana usage. Others are poised to do so potentially depending on how elections go, and many have legalized some types of usage. Some places allow CBD oil, like Georgia, and even in states such as South Carolina, where it's fully illegal, CBD shops are an ever-present part of our landscape. So what's the difference between, say, marijuana and cannabis?
Ooh, that's a good question. I believe it has something to do with the legal or medical classifications. Cannabis being the plant and marijuana being like the medical name. But I wouldn't quote me on that. I'm no doctor.
But I'm assuming the difference is just in the strain and the usage of it. Marijuana being the plant, cannabis being the drug. My best guess.
I'm going to guess that cannabis, because I really didn't know there was a difference. So I'm going to guess that cannabis is like maybe like the plant, I guess. And then the marijuana is like the actual like bushels or flowers. If I had to guess, I don't know. I actually am ignorant in that regard. I didn't know there was a difference.
I believe marijuana is different from cannabis because it has THC. THC is the stuff that makes it wacky, makes you feel funny. Yeah,
the wacky tobacco.
Yeah, the cannabis is not necessarily,
Oh, really?
to get you high stuff. Yes.
What about CBD or Delta 8 or Delta 9?
So I have deep concerns about stuff like Delta 9 and Delta 8. Anytime you start altering chemical compounds and naturally occurring substances, that makes me think of the old spice days and salvia and stuff like that. CBD has its uses. I know it provides homeopathic relief for a lot of people without the adverse side effects of marijuana that some would say, as far as, the intoxicating effects and maybe causing you to fail drug tests also. So that's about all I got on that.
They're not marijuana. They're hemp. They're derived from the CBD, the cannabinoids that are in hemp. They derive THC, and they make Delta 8 variations, Delta 9. It's just, those are just different.
Like strains?
Strains. It's just different strains, yeah. So sometimes they add other things. They might add other things in there. So you get Delta 9 might have a certain strain, and some, there's like 100 of them, THC-A and THC-N, THC-D. So it might have something slightly different.
So I'm guessing Delta 8, Delta 9, it's a different, I guess it would be like a different cannabinoid. I would guess that CBD is more of something that's been extracted from the plant that helps with like calming properties, but doesn't give you like a euphoric sense, a euphoric high, or a euphoric feeling like marijuana would. And I'm guessing Delta 8, Delta 9 are just like the different types of cannabinoid that you can extract from or that you source from the plant, if I had to guess.
So Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10, I think that those are all derivatives of the hemp. So they don't contain the THC that you get. THC and something else, and the THC is what gives you the high or whatever, and the whatever it is that's in the deltas, it can have that effect. But I think that it's also because they do, because most of the time you see delta stuff, it's in the form of like gummies or food or whatever, and I think I think the delta stuff is mostly chemical. Like there's that you do experience either a mellow feeling or a high feeling, but it's I think that it's because there's a chemical piece of it that does it.
I think it's just different products that are derived from the marijuana plant, depending on how it's processed. I've actually looked into this before, and I think that that's what it is.
I wasn't well versed on this topic going into researching the subject, and I'm relying pretty heavily on a helpful site from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services National Institute of Health. First things first, according to the site, people often use the words cannabis and marijuana interchangeably, but they don't quite mean the same thing.
I'll be honest, I didn't think there was one.
I didn't know there was.
That is a great question because I thought they were the same.
I don't know. I don't know that there is a difference. Is there?
The word cannabis refers to all products from the plant we discussed earlier: cannabis sativa, cannabis indica, and cannabis ruderalis. The word marijuana refers to parts of or products from the cannabis plant that contain substantial amounts of THC. Plants that contain very little THC are considered industrial hemp under U.S. law. While there are more than 480 chemical substances in the cannabis plant, the main cannabinoids are THC and CBD. According to a Forbes article detailing the differences between Delta 8 and Delta 9, the cannabis plant only contains a very small amount of Delta 8 THC, and because of this, is typically manufactured in concentrated amounts from hemp-derived CBD. While CBD doesn't have any intoxicating effects, Delta 8 has similar, though less potent, psychoactive properties to Delta 9. Delta 8 is not approved in any form by the FDA. In places where marijuana is illegal, Delta 8 may still be legal. In South Carolina, there has been an ongoing debate about whether or not Delta 8 is legal under the Hemp Farming Act. Since Delta 8 is extracted from industrial hemp, and industrial hemp is exempted by the definition of a Schedule I drug in South Carolina under the Hemp Farming Act.
Well, new today, local law enforcement is cracking down on hemp products in South Carolina. The move comes as the South Carolina Department of Health and Environment Control sent a letter to the hemp industry saying Delta 8 and Delta 9 are not allowed as ingredients in food or beverages in the state. Now leaders are prohibiting the sale of these products in food and drinks, pulling them from shelves. Solicitor Walt Wilkins giving us strong words on the consequences.
At the end of the day, if it gets you high, it's illegal in South Carolina. Bottom line.
Delta 9 is the major naturally occurring intoxicating component of the cannabis plant. This is the chemical component that creates the high for users. Delta 9 has been studied extensively for over 6 decades, but Delta 8 has far less published research. Because Delta 9 contains more THC, it is highly regulated in the states where it is legal and must meet specific rules on testing, extracting, and labeling. The same is not true for Delta 8. According to Dave Gordon, a double board certified integrative and functional physician with an expertise in cannabis therapeutics, a properly labeled Delta 8 would be about 1/4 to 1/3 less potent than the equivalent amount of Delta 9. Another major difference is in how the products are consumed. What forms can you get cannabis or marijuana in?
Gummy.
Edibles. Edibles, which gummies,
Brownies.
cookies, brownies.
A natural state. What else?
So in the flower state that you roll up and smoke.
Can you get pills? Probably
I've
pills.
never
We'll add
seen
those in
pills.
there.
But you can get different, they make vapes so that you can vape it. So whatever form, there's some oil of some kind, and then they make it in dabs and wax and
oh gosh, yeah, candles.
there's all kinds of different variations and different ways you can ingest it.
Well, you can get it in something smokable or an oil.
And oil's not smoked?
So oil, it depends on what type of oil it is. Sometimes the oil that's extracted can be used for baking or cooking, and there is an oil that you can put into like a vaporizer or vape thing. You can also get wax, like a concentrate that you can smoke when it heats up, and then you smoke it.
So primarily you smoke it?
I do.
No, I mean primarily it is smoked.
I think that edibles probably has become more mainstream than I would say that edibles for people that are new to it. I think edibles are probably more mainstream, and people that have been doing it before legalization and things like that. I think that that's probably more smoked.
You can get those in, let's see, flowers, bushels, whatever people want to call them. Tincture, edibles. I want to say wax. I hope that's not an ignorant answer, but I think you can get it from wax maybe, or it's like extracted into or put into wax. Vape pens.
Oh, nowadays, like everything, there's oil, there's edibles, which the oil is used to make, the actual dried plant itself that you would smoke. I don't think there's oral, like pills or anything. I think that's it.
Oh boy, man, I'm about to make myself look good or bad, depending on the audience. You can get flour, you can get concentrates, which come in the form of, wax, crumbles, oils, tinctures, things like that. You can get hash, and I think I've kind of nailed edibles. Yeah, I mean, we can also pull the THC components out of the flour for making edibles. So I think I got it all.
Delta-9 THC can be smoked or vaporized in flower or bud form without requiring any additional extraction, whereas nearly all Delta-8 as a synthesized product extracted from CBD can only be consumed as an edible or topical preparation. The Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, lists the following forms of cannabis: hashish or hash, which is the most concentrated and potent form of cannabis and contains high levels of THC. It is derived from the dried resin of the plant's flowering tops. Hash oil is refined oily extract of the cannabis plant. The oil is usually mixed with tobacco or marijuana and smoked. Hemp, as we discussed earlier, is often used in fibers such as rope, clothing, and paper. Edibles. From gummies to bakery items to candy or even brewed as a tea, or in chocolate milk, I once witnessed an entire adult kickball team high as kites after a member brought some special chocolate milk for them to try. There are a variety of ways to ingest THC. Additionally, the NIH cites a newly popular way of smoking or eating different forms of THC-rich resins via marijuana extracts. These include hash oil, which we mentioned, but also wax or butter, which is a soft solid with a texture similar to lip balm, and shatter, which is a hard amber-colored solid. These extracts can deliver extremely large amounts of THC to the body. Despite being illegal for some, marijuana usage continues to be the most commonly used, largely illegal drug worldwide, with around 5% of the world's population between the ages of 15 and 65 using it. So it's no surprise that many people I talk to have tried it or use it regularly. Have you ever had marijuana?
Yes, I've tried it before.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
All of the above.
According to Pew Research, half of U.S. adults, 50.3% say they have used marijuana in a 2022 survey. The same study indicated 84.1% of adults reported having consumed alcohol and 64.8% who have used tobacco products. I asked people who have tried marijuana before to describe the effects.
I don't remember. I giggled a lot.
No, in general. I don't necessarily mean the first time.
Oh, I just, it gives me a really mellow feeling. My tolerance is much higher, for like people and such. I think it just has a very calming effect, and I think it allows me to probably be more enjoyable around people.
When I tried it, it gave me a sense of paranoia. It wasn't as bad as I've heard other people's stories. I think the paranoia part came from just me as an adolescent, just wanting to be in control a lot all the time. So just giving up that control was kind of a little nerve wracking. But high school, just trying it like that second time or whatever, it definitely gave me a sense of like euphoria and dealing with the pressures in school and performing and stuff like that. I felt like it kind of helped alleviate some stress. But that initial time, very first time, it was definitely a slight case of paranoia.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of the first time when it felt like... I don't think I could tell you the first time, honestly.
I felt at peace, calm, very giggly.
Mm-hmm. Calm,
Hungry.
Yeah.
Later. But it was in a party setting, so everybody was having like
a good time.
The best time.
Now, I mean, there's been, some of them that make me energetic. I want to go out and do stuff. If I'm in this, I don't know if it might be more the situation than anything, but then there's some that just literally make you feel like I've forgotten all English language and I just want to sit here and stare at all the pretty colors. But yeah, I'd say pretty mellow is kind of the general consensus.
I was about as high as a 14-year-old could be, as far as that goes. I mean, I was baked out of my mind, laughing like a jackal. Not good. As I got older, the effects just became more of like a mood stabilizing, mellowing, appetite increase sort of thing.
Most describe some of the common stereotypes like giggling and the munchies, but relaxation was not an uncommon response as well. Given that so many had used it, I was curious if their job tested for THC.
I have a job that it does preliminary checks.
No, my job does not. My job is headquartered out of a state that marijuana is legal, and a lot of its subsidiary offices are in countries and cities in the United States that are legal.
Regardless of whether marijuana is legal in a state, it is not protected by employment laws, meaning that employers are free to implement a no-tolerance policy, regardless of whether or not the drug is legal in that state. However, it is becoming more common for some jobs not to test for marijuana usage, even if they still do a drug screening. Even in a state where neither medicinal nor recreational use of marijuana is legal, people still regularly partake. How often do you use marijuana in any form?
Not anymore, because the last answer to your question is how did I feel towards the end of it when I was doing more of it, and that was paranoid.
I live in a state where marijuana is illegal and work a career that does random drug testing. So I would certainly say in my day I would have been a daily smoker, but in my elder years I need to be cautious about avoiding that.
Not often.
I would probably say daily.
Daily?
When I say daily because I will do it at night before I go to sleep, and it helps me stay asleep.
The same Pew Research survey that indicated half of American adults have used marijuana also indicated that not nearly as many of them are regular or current users. Only 23% admitted to having used it in the preceding year of the survey, and just 15.9% said they'd used it in the last month. We discussed that there were a variety of ways that marijuana can be consumed.
I smoked it, and I had edibles. Those are the two.
So I've done it with gummies and just flowers.
Smoking, but smoke, edibles, vape. Yep.
I smoke vape, oil.
And definitely the brownies and cookies and all that.
Yeah, that's like brownies are classic.
According to an NIH study, the highest percentage of respondents smoked marijuana, with about half that amount reporting the use of edibles, then vaping, then concentrates, then topicals. Smoking was the most prevalent way of using marijuana in states where usage is illegal, and edibles were reported to be used at nearly double the rate for states where it's legal versus those where it isn't. The study also indicated that the prevalence of marijuana usage was highest in adults under 34 years of age. I asked my participants how old they were the first time they tried it.
I was 31 years old the first time I ever smoked marijuana.
I was either 16 or 17. I can't remember which one, but I was fairly young.
Ooh, I'm embarrassed to admit I was 14 years old the first time. Way too young, big regret. That I always, I would never advise children who are still young and developing to mess around with marijuana. But yeah, I was 14. That is not a badge of honor.
12?
Yeah, I think 12.
12?
I think
Jeez
so.
Louise.
I'm not going to lie. Some of these ages were very surprising to me. I've tried it before, and the first time, I was in my mid-20s. I scarcely remember it even being around other than with a small group of my peers when I was younger. I asked my 13-year-old son about marijuana.
Hi, this is actually kind of a serious one. All right? Can you do this for me?
What is it?
Yeah, like... What do you know about marijuana?
It's a plant, and if it's dried and you could smoke it.
And what do they teach you about marijuana in school?
They don't.
You had DARE and all of that.
DARE, let me think. No, that just said not to do it.
Right, okay.
So they didn't teach us anything about it. It's like bad for health and brain and lung.
Well, that's teaching you something about it, isn't it?
I didn't know smoking was bad for your lungs. Well, that type of smoking.
Well, all kind of smoking is bad for your lungs.
Okay.
Okay. Do you know anybody who does it?
Probably. I smell it around school.
And you're in middle school, so those are all 7th and 8th graders?
Yep.
Do you think it's safe for people to do it?
Responsibly. Like if you're in the right to do it in the States.
So what about when you're a child, like in 7th and 8th grade?
No, because it messes with your brain. It's not fully developed.
So when would it be appropriate?
21.
21?
22.
22?
Yep.
And why do you say that?
Because that's when, I don't remember the name, but it's like at the front of your brain. It's when it's fully developed decision making or whatever.
So why do you think the kids who do not have the front of their brain fully developed are doing it?
Peer pressure, friends.
Is it hard to say no to that kind of thing?
I don't know. Never been asked that.
Would it be hard?
No.
You just be like, nah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it.
It sounds like it's not uncommon for kids his age to have tried it, or even use marijuana with some regularity. According to the National Center for Drug Abuse, among kids 12 to 17, nearly 44% have tried marijuana at least once. 35% have used marijuana in the last year, and almost 7% of 12th graders use marijuana daily. 62% of 12th graders who use marijuana consume it via vaping. Even in states where it is legal, the legal age is 21. There is no source I found that contended that marijuana usage was appropriate for developing children. For fully developed adults, however, marijuana can bring relief from debilitating pain, can reduce instances of post-traumatic stress syndrome, can provide relief for migraines and joint pain, and for adults who consume it recreationally, it can help them relax and enjoy the moment. As is the case with any mind-altering substance, whether it's marijuana or alcohol, or a really strong cold medicine, it's important that users are safe and smart when they partake. So there we have it, my Wonderlings. We've explored the history and usage of marijuana in this After Dark episode. Did you learn anything you didn't know already? I'd love your input on this episode, and I'd also love to know if you're interested in future episodes of Welcome to Wonderland After Dark, where we explore some more mature topics. If you have ideas for topics, either for After Dark or regular episodes, please email me at welcometowonderlandthepod@gmail.com. Also, I want to take a moment to mention that this podcast was nominated for the Post and Courier Free Times Best of Columbia, Best Local Podcast. We are honored to have been nominated alongside 3 other wonderful podcasts, Here for the Health of It, Purpose Over Profits, and our partner podcast, the All About Nothing podcast. Voting is already closed and winners will be announced in August. And regardless of how we do, I am so proud of this creative project, and I am beyond thankful to have such wonderful listeners like you who thought enough of this podcast to even earn us the nomination. Thank you so much, my Wonderlings. And as always, be safe, be kind, and stay curious. The Welcome to Wonderland podcast is copyrighted by Amii Bland and is part of Big Media. This podcast was recorded in the Welcome to Wonderland recording closet, which is also where I keep my clothes and shoes. It's a tight fit in here, friends, but I love you enough to endure. Any thoughts or opinions expressed as part of this production are those of the hostess unless otherwise indicated. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Please follow, like, and share this podcast. Find us on Facebook at Welcome to Wonderland, the podcast, and on X, the app formerly known as Twitter, at Wonderland_pod. Check out behind-the-scenes moments and other videos on TikTok at Wonderland Pod, and finally, check out pictures, additional information, and go further down the rabbit hole, or pick up some Welcome to Wonderland merchandise on our website, www.WTWLpod.com. To submit corrections, additional information, or request for episodes, please email the hostess at welcometowonderlandthepod@gmail.com. Imagine being the first person who's like, I've got some paprika here. What have you got? And they're like, I've got this wacky lettuce. Do you want the wacky lettuce?